It's that whole psychological strength, whether it be mental or physical or both, of just getting back on and trying to move forward, no matter how small or big that step is. Thanks to the migraine, I have learned that the most excruciating pain is the sort that is invisible and untouchable. But while the migraine has lashed out some of its cruelest evils, I've also experienced the greatest kind of love because of its curse. When it comes to intuition that something just doesn't feel right, you are your best advocate, and don't feel intimidated by a specialist or a doctor. You only have this one body, you only have this one life. And if you don't do it for yourself, do it for your family and your loved ones.
Welcome to Stories and Stanza. I am your host, Abhra. I am a poet, and I created this podcast to bring you a montage of real stories that make life beautiful as poetry. Some stories are my own, and some are from the wonderful people who have chosen to join me as guests and bring their incredible journey. Stories include a creator's passion or unfolding branches of human emotions in the face of failure, or unfamiliar chapters from the past that remind us about the richness and vastness of life. Embark on a voyage of exploration, contemplation, and motivation with me. Please join me in welcoming today's guest speaker. Hi Natasha, welcome back to Stories and Stanza.
Hi there. Thank you for having me, and it's long time no see. It's wonderful to see you.
It's wonderful to have you back. And I want to say to the listeners that Natasha and I recorded an episode previously where we talked about her book. It was a great episode because back then it was an audio only podcast, and that episode was, I think it still is, the highest number of listens in all episodes in Stories and Stanza. So when we talked about a new episode, I was really keen because now we have upgraded to a video plus audio podcast. So I really look forward to it. And for those who are joining us for the first time, Natasha, would you please give a brief introduction?
Yeah, for sure. So thank you, Abhra. So yeah, it's when you told me that the episode that we had recently or like earlier this year when we recorded it was one of the highest attended podcasts. I was really humbled and really happy to hear. So thank you for the opportunity again for having me on your show. As for myself, I was actually born in Australia, in Perth, Australia. And I recall that you are now in Melbourne. And I was born in Australia, but I came to Canada when I was really young. So that is where I currently live right now in Alberta, in Canada. And I work in the public sector during the day, but as I kind of described myself, have always been in love, have a passion for writing. So as a hobby, I write on the side. And as you mentioned, I recently have published a book called The Silent Paralyzer. And it really is a chronicle, a documentation of my experiences with a really rare disorder that hopefully I'll be able to share a little bit of the disorder today in our chat. And yeah, been basically living in Canada for the last, I'd say probably now 30 some 40 years now. And
Wonderful.
yeah, happy to be here today.
Thank you. And today we are talking about a very serious subject, and we have decided for this episode to go live in December. So, for our listeners, would you like to say what it is about and why have we chosen particularly this month for this episode?
Absolutely. So I, through the writing of my book and and just kind of going through research and just finding out and learning as much as I can about the disorder that I have. 10 years ago, I was diagnosed with something called hemiplegic migraine. And it is basically it's a very serious my migraine. Once I got diagnosed, I learned that there are a multitude of different types of migraines, and not all of them manifests as, head pain. The type that I have is a condition that when it attacks, it causes various types of stroke symptoms, anywhere ranging from, facial droopage to loss of speech, not being able to move. And depending on when the attack comes, if it causes me, fall down staircases and the like, it might even render me unconscious. And so, as I was learning a little bit more about this rare disorder, I also came across to learn that December is a Disability Awareness Month, and in particularly December 3rd was kind of the International Day of persons with disabilities. And through the years, going through a multitude of medical providers and specialists, come to realize that this type of migraine, it is classified as a disability. But of course, when it doesn't attack you, I look like anybody else. I can talk, I can move, I can go about life, as a normal routine. But the minute an attack comes, I am definitely someone who needs help to be able to move around in my surroundings. And basically, you are rendered disabled until you're able to relearn how to walk, how to talk, and get back some of your sensations in your arms and your limbs. And so, why December is such an important month? It is to increase the awareness that all disabilities are of importance, and also to let your audience know, to let the world know, to let as many people know that there are many disabilities, though, that are invisible. And a migraine, while for many is something that is, maybe lasts for a couple of days, depending on the type that you have, there are many other sorts of migraines that can last for weeks on end, and it comes back again. It doesn't go away, and it's not a one and done thing. And unfortunately, a disorder like myself that I have, that's the type of that's the type of disease or disorder that I have, where it is a disability when it comes to attacking you. And which is why I thought having a conversation today in the month of December is so important. If nothing else, just to raise awareness and to let people know that there, is something that it's very common. Everybody heard or may have even experienced themselves a sort of migraine, but also realize so that there isn't just one type, and it can be serious.
Thank you for doing this and helping spread awareness on such a very important topic. And I strongly believe that the more we talk about all these sort of hidden subjects, the more we, uh, build a better future. And I remember that
Oh, for sure.
I had a few difficult years in the family, and when I came out of it, I felt that I needed to talk about it, which is kind of one of the inspirations for starting this podcast. I'll just briefly mention that my wife had like severe depression. It's kind of postpartum depression and psychosis that she went through for a couple of years. And when she was going through that, I had no idea what is happening. And it took us couple of years to be able to diagnose this properly. Like we were going to
Yeah.
the doctors and coming back and not understanding what it is. And it took us some time to get to the actual diagnosis. And when in that period, I felt that because we don't know a lot of things, we feel puzzled by it. So I really admire that not only you uh, handle this firsthand and then, like you battled this, and you're also working on spreading awareness on this. So that is really amazing. And you mentioned something in the introduction that there are many sort of types of migraines, but then
Mhm.
some of those can escalate and become a stroke-like symptoms. So, do you know like what happens? Is it possible for us to understand like the big spectrum of migraine, what causes it, and what leads us to this kind of severity?
Yeah, so from what I understand or what I've learned through the years is there are at least upwards, at least when I was first diagnosed with this particular type, there were at that time upwards of like 12 to 15 types of different migraines. And it turns out that the type that I have, and it's called hair, that, one out of 10,000 people have what I have. In the statistically speaking, there are about a billion people who are affected by migraines, and then out of that, it's about one in 10,000. So it is very rare. And but Rarest of the rare, when it does attack, though, it is quite serious in the sense that, as you mentioned, with the stroke-like symptoms, and so what does that actually mean? You mentioned just now, Obra, about the condition that your wife had to go through and what the family had to go through in terms of even finding out that something was wrong to diagnosing something and then figuring out how to treat. And even though we're halfway across the world from each other, it's pretty much kind of the same path that we had to take, and are in some ways that I'm still taking right now. And so many a time people ask, kind of, how did this all happen? How did it all start? And I can tell you, about 10 and a half some odd years ago, happened in the middle of the night. All of a sudden, I'm jolted up, awake, and just know that something felt really off and really wrong. And 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, I'm trying to ask for help, and in bed, I'm trying to ask my husband to wake up and help me because I felt something was wrong. And that was when I realized or felt that the whole left side of my body was completely missing, or at least it felt like it was missing. And to boot, I couldn't talk. I wanted to scream. I wanted to use words to wake my husband up. And I couldn't, because while I knew what I wanted to say, the words wouldn't come out. So you kind of fast forward that, got into the emergency room and went through MRI, CT scans, a bout of lumbar punctures, blood tests, and then more tests. And at the end of the day, my neurologist at the time then had said, what you've got is a migraine. And that was when, you just kind of, initially, you don't believe what they're saying, because, your perception of something that's seemingly so common, to have escalated into symptoms that are so serious, it's very hard to believe, right? And so it was then a journey of learning the different types of migraines that can occur. And then as you're even learning, though, for myself at that time, my attacks had come on very, very frequently after that. It seemed as though after that one night when, I had lost all feeling, lost all sensation in my body, the attack just kind of kept on coming. Every couple of weeks, I would get an attack, and it would manifest differently every time. Sometimes it would be from head to toe, no feeling. I could be walking all of a sudden or coming off of some steps, and all of a sudden my feeling would just leave me, and I would tumble down staircases, or I would be fast asleep, and My family would actually have to wake me up in the morning because I wouldn't wake up. And we realized that the attack actually came while I was sleeping. And I needed to kind of recalibrate myself to remember who I was and who all the people around me were, and they were my family. And so you'd have to do, if you can imagine, these stroke-like symptoms. Needing to relearn how to walk, how to dress yourself, needing to be quite frank, even going to the bathroom. You're needing, again, step by step, to reattach kind of the messaging that your brain gives to your limbs. It definitely is always a journey, and something to kind of always needing to recover and start all over again. So so that was actually kind of the initial, I guess, experiences of this disorder. As we talked about this being a disability, it's very much a disability when the attack comes, up until the point when you are needing to relearn kind of basic skill sets to kind of move on with your life. And as time has gone on, the good news is that my attacks have subsided. But while the frequency has gone down, I'd say that whenever a 10 comes, it is upwards of 4 to 8 weeks of recovery, where again, depending on where the stroke symptoms kind of manifest itself, whether it's on my face or on my limbs or whatnot, it takes that long for me to relearn how to walk, and to even just get back the energy level that you need to go about daily life. And it definitely is a struggle. And I would say um, it's a different type of struggle, than, say, if you were going through depression or a physical disability. But it is still kind of the same pattern, I would say, of always needing to be taken care of, or going to your doctor, and talking about treatment and going through the treatment, right? And then you kind of go through the cycle all over again, hope the attack, or hope that the disorder doesn't come back, right? And always trying to find ways of preventing it from coming back. And I think that is where you know uh, a big challenge, I would say, of facing any disability or a disorder is. It's that whole psychological strength, whether it be mental or physical or both, of just getting back on and trying to move forward, no matter how small or big that step is.
I admire your courage and strength in battling such a deadly disease. And if there is anything that I have kind of consistently followed in this podcast, is emotional intelligence, resilience, and mental strength. And I am sure that your voice, your story is a big contributor to this. And you mentioned some of these challenges. It is amazing how you came out stronger on the other side when you had these attacks. And I think when an illness or something unknown like that comes to our life, there is a hard part with accepting what it is, and then you get to
Absolutely.
battle this. And you how would you say that what was your mental journey throughout this difficult period?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And right, you use the term acceptance. That's still something that I grapple with every day. Like, and acceptance means, right, you're receiving it and you're keeping it with you. And many a time it's, I mean, I haven't accepted, when I think about what I have, right? It's not something that I want, it's something that I just want to, like, keep away from me as best as I can. Um, and so, but it's something though that when it does come, unfortunately, I don't have the ability to push it away, and I don't have the ability to ignore it and pretend that it's not there, right? And so you learn to live with it, and to me, that's different from acceptance. And to me, that is something that, I live with it. I learn to deal with it. But it's not necessarily saying that I accept it, right? And, your kind words about, being courageous and brave enough to talk about this. It took me a really long time to even tell people what I have. And I mean, by tell people is, if I'm at work, needing to let coworkers know, because I mean, the attack could happen anytime. And it has now since happened a couple of times, more than I would like, even in my workspace, in my office, right? Place of work where, people don't necessarily need to know kind of all your struggles in your personal life, right? And it kind of happens. It took me a while to really kind of open up and talk about even to my closest friends, right? And for a long time, I didn't even really talk about it much, with my immediate family members, short of my son and my husband, who, needed to or had to see it. They had no choice, right? When I first had this disorder, my son was barely 3 years old, right? And so he, definitely wouldn't have remembered when I first had this or got this disorder. And for a very long time, my husband and I, we really tried to shield it away from him. So whenever the attack came, right, I would, be in my room for, a day or two, on end. And while he may know that mommy was sick, that was as far as he knew, right? But as time went on and it became apparent that this disease, this disorder was not going to go away, became harder and harder to shield that away from the child. And so even when you talk about courage and just kind of being able to accept and live through this type of disorder or disability of a family member, it extends beyond me. It extends out to family members. Right. And, where you talked about your wife's condition too, right? And I'd say, the courage is not only with your wife, but it's also with you, and the family members too that were there to help her, right? And so I think a lot of the times the challenges and the hardships, the mental resilience that you reference and talk about, it's not just a necessity of the person that is impacted by the disease, it's also with the people that are needing to provide support to you as well. The recent book, for instance, that I published that chronicles kind of my journey in these last 10 years, I dedicated it to my husband, because, from day one, he was there and still is, right? Whenever I can't move, whenever I can't feed myself, whenever I can't go to the bathroom, who's the person that needs to be there with me to like guide me along that way, and to feed me, to dress me? It's my husband, right? And now that my child, like my son now, he's thir 13 now this year, and he's even needed into these recent years. If my husband can't or is not around, my son actually needs to help me now too. And so, and it's hard, right? I think, I say sometimes even it's harder than for you as a family member to see someone you care about suffer and go through something that you can't help them with. And, I would even argue sometimes that it's even harder um, for your family members than it is for yourself going through the disease or the disorder. And that mental resilience you need, it's seeing, at least it is for me, when I see kind of how worried, my family gets. and how, and them actually trying not to show it, but that they're really worried, maybe sometimes even panicked or terrified. Um, you know, that I think is a large part of the mental strength, mental resilience that kind of pushes you along. But it's not all the time too, and it's not easy either, right? There are days, especially days after an attack, right? I just want to kind of show up in a ball and disappear, because it's just so hard. And especially if it's something that happens again and again. And, no matter how much doctors say, oh, this might be the last attack, studies show that as you get older and as you kind of approach kind of, your mid to late 40s, usually, this disorder kind of disappears, right? And it doesn't become as serious anymore. Now I'm 44 this year, and 10 years ago they had told me by the time I was 40, I probably wouldn't have this anymore, and it probably would be distant memory of the past, and it hasn't gone away for me. And it's gotten to the point now where even my doctors are saying, yeah, unfortunately, you might be one of the fewer of the few that may have to live with this for the rest of your life. And that was very hard to stomach, as well, especially knowing there's no cure. And you just have to live with it. And so you're kind of faced with a choice when these sorts of things happen. You either choose to kind of sit there and you sulk and you feel sorry for yourself, right? Or you choose to spend a little time, feeling a little bit sorry for yourself, but then push all of that away and then try to kind of move on for the next day. And if not for yourself, then you do it for your family. And you just kind of pick up the pieces along the way and you try to piece them together every time, and try to make do the best that you can.
No, that is beautifully said. And before I say anything, I admire your husband's effortless kind of work in this. What I meant by acceptance is that for the longest time, when I was battling this situation in my family, but we are kind of close to like what similar in age, okay? So you probably understand the sentiments better. That I used to feel, why me or why us? Why are we going through this? And then I
Yeah,
felt,
that's exactly. Yeah.
you know, for me, it was like I had a scale and I said, on this side, I have this pain and suffering and frustration. And on the other side, I was balancing that. I'll say, oh, I'll have to do this, I'll do writing or photography or whatever to balance it. Okay. But it took me a long time to realize that the more, till like, if I keep holding on to it, if I keep saying that I refuse to accept it, the pain is only higher and higher and higher, and it kind of builds up. So, a lot of my writing so far has been from the pain and suffering. But now I feel that it is like you are in a place where there is a door in the front and there is a door in the back. All these emotions coming in and they're passing through you. The more you try to latch onto them, hold on to them, heavier they are for you. So accepting, by that I meant is like facing it, but not be weighed down by it, and see each day with an open heart, an open mind.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and I think you're absolutely right. There's different outlets for different people. And, for people like you and I, we turn to words and we turn to the writing as an outlet, right? And like I said, it was, I've always loved to write. And so that wasn't an issue. But, when it came to the point where, a lot of people ask me, kind of my latest writing, the memoir about the hemiplegic migraine, and they asked me, did I come about, or when did I come about deciding that I was going to write? And admittedly, I was in a not so happy, great place. This one year when it was a particularly bad year for attacks. I'd say it was a year where I again had an attack, a pretty serious one. It happened at work, and so not only did family members knew or saw, right? Now I had like you know people at work seeing me at in a state that I would rather nobody see me at, right? And at that time, not everybody knew what I was going through and what I had at work, right? And so I had that going on, and because at that point in time, the attack was super serious in the sense that it took me upwards of about 5 months for me to get back to normal and for me to get back to work, sort of a thing. And during kind of those 4 to 5 months, it was just that. It's the spectrum that you just talked about, right? It's that whole, got one side of it really dark, you're really angry, you're just frustrated, you just want to give up. What's the point? Right? And on the other end, it's like, but there is maybe still a shed of light somewhere. And you just have to figure out a way to get there. And I don't know how, to be honest, but it just happened that, I was just sitting there one day and, and I just started getting to, being able to hold a pen, right. And being able to hold stuff and being able to feed myself again. And I thought, why don't I just start to write? And let's write about a story that I know best. And the story is about myself and about this condition, about hemiplegic migraine, because hardly anybody knows about this condition. And they certainly don't know how serious a migraine can get and can be. And I had also at that time joined a few hemiplegic migraine kind of Facebook groups online, even just to scour through most recent research or any medications, or even just for my own knowledge. And I realized that other than the people who have been or are afflicted with this disorder, the majority of people, healthcare providers, doctors and specialists included, don't know much about this disease. And even if there were any literature or writing that had to do with migraines, or the type of migraine that I have, they were also medical and so how do I say it, but cold in terms of how they describe it, right? And so the drive to be able to kind of share with the world this particular disability, this particular disorder, kind of was the start of me thinking, this might be my outlet, not so much for, Natasha as an author, but more like Natasha needing an outlet to let the world know, to let people know that there is something quite serious, and that that actually might be closer to home than you think, right? And again, it's something that that everybody is on their own timeline. And and for many people, there are people who have a disorder or have something that I have even, that aren't still comfortable sharing with people, and that's okay. Right. But for me, it was mostly wanting to let people know that they weren't alone. And there was someone like me even, who have something that they have too, and that, that there was somebody who actually understood, and can relate to kind of the pain and the hardships that go along with something like this.
A form of association, like how you see an advertisement and you feel maybe happy. Similar way, then you see someone talking about their suffering and coming back from it. Then by association, you feel uh, better and spirited about what you are going through. And now I really uh, uh, admire that perspective. And I remember something from our first discussion, and I think you touched upon this today as well, that when you had these attacks and then you were like you didn't have any control on your body, you couldn't call your husband or call for help, and that helplessness. And then you said that when you sometimes came back, then you took a little bit of time to process and regain yourself. And every time I speak to a non-fiction writer on this podcast, I shared this about this particular experience, that I think, choosing to give that a voice by talking about it, you are capturing something that is truly priceless. And in a way, that is gratitude as well, because you are expressing that I'm thankful and I am back and I am preserving that precious memory through my words. So I really uh, appreciate that that's the road you took, and then you are setting an example for anyone with this condition. And it's not just this condition. As we are talking about this in the month of December, I'm sure that it is applicable to anyone with a condition where they are struggling. And on that note, can I request you to read something from your book for our listeners? And those who are on audio, they cannot see the book, but can you hold it up and show it once?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So this is the book, the
Wonderful.
Silent Paralyzer. Yeah, and so just my shameless pitch, but it's available on Amazon and Goodreads and Indigo. So there's a slew of platforms that if people were interested
Yeah,
to
can
learn a
I
little bit
say that
more,
it is not
you can
a
find it there.
it's not a shameless speech, but it is reasserting your struggle.
Well, thank you. I just thought that I would maybe read a little bit of an excerpt, kind of towards the end of the memoir, actually. But I think it captures kind of um, when we again talked about accepting and living with the disorder and kind of where my sentiments are now, 10 years later, after being diagnosed. And so um, here goes. Some may think that with the sharing of my story, I have found my peace with a hemiplegic migraine, that I have somehow accepted it as part of me, that it is a part of my life. This is not that kind of book. Thanks to the migraine, I have learned that the most excruciating pain is the sort that is invisible and untouchable. But while the migraine has lashed out some of its cruelest evils, I've also experienced the greatest kind of love because of its curse. I've come to learn the importance of gratitude and know now that without health, there is nothing. But despite all this, I will never make peace with it. Though unable to prevent the hemiplegia from entering my body when it decides to come, I at least have the will and freedom to reject its presence. It is the only power I have left against the paralysis. At best, there have been times when I've shifted my mindset to think that the migraine is what my body uses to signal that I've overdone it. It is a beacon that warns me that I've been going too fast and in need of slowing down, but I will never accept it as an extension of me. While my story is not about making peace, it is about raising and spreading awareness of something that may otherwise have been buried. It is my hope that with my voice, I would be giving those who are suffering like I have validity. For those who are still searching for answers to what is afflicting them, I have given a palpable possibility to pursue. There are still so many nights where I've been unable to sleep, afraid that if I drift away, the paralysis will once again silently take over. From time to time, I still find myself fending away the dark thoughts that lurk in the corner of my mind, taunting me that another hemiplegic episode is coming for me soon. But in these moments where I would have easily yielded to fear, anger, and guilt, I am instead learning to acknowledge these emotions that have been in the past. So choose between two paths: to stay stagnant and let all bad things in until they wither away and or disappear, or to fight for my place in the world, to move on and explore what other possibilities. I've chosen the path of moving forward with my loved ones every time. It hasn't always been easy, and there have been countless days where everything in me refuses to even try. But just as I was chosen to carry the hemiplegic migraine, I was also given life, and so I must continue to live. The hemiplegic migraine may grip me, but it will never define me. On these two battered feet, I stand tall, my heart a patchwork of scars and hope. I am still breathing, still laughing, still daring to believe that being all right isn't just a dream. Instead, it's the horizon I walk towards, one sunlit step at a time, because I am still living. I am still here.
That is so powerful. And I was thinking, before I asked you to read that, you
Yeah.
mentioned people who are, with the condition sometimes may not feel comfortable talking about it, may not want to express it. And I think that you summed it up so well that I am sure it will resonate with anyone listening to this episode, and it can be a great step towards building awareness.
Oh, well, thank you, Oprah. I mean, I absolutely hope so. I'd always said with this writing or with the sharing of my story, even if it resonates with one person, that's one extra person that, had may have felt by themselves or uh, alone until they heard my story, and that would have been worth it all. So thank you for the opportunity to share.
I think we covered some really important aspects of battling such conditions, about the awareness, about the support system, about the mental health, and of course, like accepting that as a journey. I think we did really good. Do you think we should talk about anything else that you have in mind for this episode?
Not really. I mean, one of the things maybe if I could leave your audience, with this one message. I mean, today's conversation absolutely wanting to share the awareness of hemiplegic migraine, knowing that it is, it can be a disability, and invisible one, but a disability. But I would say even more important than that, would really encourage folks, regardless of where they live in the world, that when it comes to health and mental issues, is to always remember that you are your best advocate. Doctors, nurses, health practitioners, absolutely, they have all the best intentions in the world to help you, but they don't know you. When it comes to your health, when it comes to intuition, that something just doesn't feel right, you are your best advocate, and don't feel intimidated by a specialist or a doctor with, so many years of experience. And absolutely take their advice, you know, get their knowledge, learn as much as you can from them. But at the end of the day, if what they are suggesting or what they are asking you to do, for your health doesn't feel right, don't be afraid to speak up. And I learned that if nothing else in these last 10 plus years of, figuring out how to treat and or prevent, my disorder, it is that, there, and I do, talk about this or share this in my book too as well, in the memoir. But it's, again, you are your best advocate, and no one can take that away from you. And it's not easy. It's not an easy journey. If you're one of the lucky few who end up having a healthcare specialist that just seems to get you and you click, that's fantastic, and I couldn't be happier for you. But for many of us, it is also a journey too. And I think a lot of the times that is also what is challenging as well, because not only are you needing to deal with the actual, challenge or thing that is making your life so difficult, you're also now needing to deal with somebody, who may or may not be listening to you. And but again, what I'd like to encourage people is don't be afraid to speak up. You only have this one body, you only have this one life. And if you don't do it for yourself, do it for your family and your loved ones.
That is so beautiful and heartwarming note to conclude the episode. Thank you once again for taking the time and coming to Stories and Stanza. And for those listening, I would encourage you to check out Natasha's book, and I'll have her bio and the book link in the episode description. Thank you once again for joining us today.
Thank you very much.